Hello, everyone. My name is Tim Singleton. We'll be starting here in just a moment. I'd like to make sure everybody gets a chance to join. Okay, there's still a couple last people trickling in, but let's just jump in. My name is Tim Singleton. I'm going to be running up this webinar today entitled, jump to the next slide, how to run your business remotely and thrive without losing customers or productivity. With everything going on today, all of the madness out there, a lot of companies are unfortunately shutting down. The ones that can continue to run are more and more running remotely, having all their workers, or as many of their workers as can, work from home. And that presents a lot of challenges. A lot of times companies haven't had all of their workers remotely. Sometimes one or two when they get sick, but rarely everyone. And so there's challenges such as loneliness and remote access, and how do you actually do this? And in the middle of this whole thing, there's what happens if the economy crashes and my business. There's all kinds of troubles, and so what we're going to be talking about today is not just how to run your business remotely, but how to take some of the challenges that show up because of the situation and actually learn to thrive because of them. We will be recording this webinar and we'll email it out to everyone who's registered. So if you need to drop off early, I understand. We'll be sending you that email. Let's dive right in. Who am I and who is Strive IT? This is me. I've been in the industry for over 20 years. I moved to Colorado back in 2005 and founded Strive IT shortly thereafter. It's about 14 years we've been in business. We specialize solely in SMB, small and medium-sized businesses. We manage IT services, IT security, everything soup to nuts related to computers, internet technology, email, security, anything like that. If it plugs in, we take care of it. That's me. I don't want to belabor that. Let's just jump right in. Here's what you're going to discover and what we're talking about today. Number one is how to be at home and actually do work. Sometimes, obviously, people find this challenging. Number two is the secret to getting teams to succeed remotely. A lot of people haven't worked in teams remotely before. They're used to just walking up to each other's desks and saying hi, and there are some different things to consider when running teams remotely. What you absolutely must know about IT security and working remotely. There are some different things that need to be taken into consideration because people are working from home on home computers, etc. And then finally, how to thrive. This is the call to action. This is the part of the webinar that if the rest of it is a bit doom and gloom or a bit technical, this is the part that I'm really trying to help businesses thrive. I'm really trying to help bring people up and keep people motivated during this really challenging time. So how to be at home and actually do work. Here's some, why is this important? Here's the gist of this slide here is, number one, there are different types of remote access. If you have computers at your house, or your employees have computers at their house, and you have data at the office, and the office is built to not let anybody from the outside world in, how do you let them in securely and soundly and let them actually do their work? There's two traditional ways of doing this, VPN and remote screen sharing. So I'll take a minute to go over each of these. VPN, virtual private network, a lot of people have heard of this. It's a way of taking a computer somewhere in the outside world and virtually putting it on your local network at your business office. You have a piece of software on the end user's workstation. You have a piece of software on somewhere on the network at the office, either on the firewall or on a server. And those two pieces of software connect to one another, and they create a virtual connection between the user's computer and allow it to send and receive data through the network. This is great because it allows you to take your laptop with all of your programs, all of your data, all of your files, all of your system settings and preferences, take that home and turn it on, and you're still sort of at home in terms of your computer experience. Everything is the way that it was when you're at work. You launch the VPN software and everything continues to work the way that it does when you're in the office. You can launch your database program and can talk back and forth with your database. You can share files. It's great. It's got the big advantage of you can take one computer and move it back and forth between the office and the house. You don't need to reinstall software. You don't have to worry about licensing. You just turn it on and it works as if it did in the office. Downside is, what if when you're in the office, you're transferring really big files? In the office, that doesn't necessarily matter. You don't really notice it because office networks tend to be really fast, on the order of 100 to 1,000 megabits per second. You don't need to know how fast that actually is, but remember that faster internet connections these days often max out around 50 megabits per second. So you might be on a connection that's 20 times slower than your connection between your computer at the office and the network server. So if the thing that you're trying to do is to open a large file, that large file needs to be opened on the server and then encrypted and then sent over your slower internet connection and then decrypted on your laptop, and then you can use it. And everything should work fine, but speed might be an issue here. Not to say that you shouldn't do this, just keep in mind, if you're doing really large file transfers, large database transfers, things like that, if you're working with big images, this might be challenging for you. You might want to choose the other way of remotely accessing your data, which is remote screen share. A lot of people have heard this, log me in, go to my PC, remote desktop, team viewer. These are all versions of remote screen sharing. The way this works is your computer at the office has a program on it, and that stays in the office. Your computer at home or your tablet at home has a program on it, and that connects to your computer at the office. And all you're doing with your computer at home is remotely controlling the mouse and keyboard, and you're seeing the screen of the machine at the office. You're not actually transferring files from the server at the office to your home computer. The file transfer happens between the server at the office and your computer at the office, and all you're seeing is what shows up on the screen at the office. Big advantage to this is all of that slow data transfer that happens over VPN happens nice and fast at the office because everything stays on your local office LAN. So things tend to be a lot faster. The downside is sometimes you have problems with printing. If the document is being opened at your office computer and you want to print that document on your home computer, sometimes that presents challenges. Most of these programs have ways around that, but just keep in mind that that's a potential issue. The bigger one is you actually need a computer at home. So if you're giving everybody laptops at the office and they take their laptop home with them, then there is no computer at the office to do screen sharing. There is no computer to remotely control that's at the house now. If that's the situation you're in, then VPN is really the best option here. So that's the different types of remote access. Just keep in mind that you need to think about that. Why else is this important that we're talking about how to actually do work at home? Some functions need to be configured and secured differently for home access. This isn't anything that can't be done. It's just something you want to think about. Things like turning on a VPN. Sometimes the VPNs are built into your server or firewall, but they need to be activated. Screen sharing has to have certain security privileges added to it. So Again, we'll go over the details of some of these, but just this is another thing that you want to be thinking about in terms of what do I need to do to actually do work. Finally, there's other functions that can't actually be secured or configured, but have to be redirected. Postal mail is a good example of this. You can't just configure mail to show up at your house instead, so it needs to be redirected, which you can probably do from the post office. So those are major considerations. Let's jump into what you need to do to handle all these considerations. First, figure out what type of data you're using. If you're sending back and forth a bunch of little Word documents and that's all, or if you are doing 90% of your work in the cloud, then you don't necessarily need a screen sharing option. If you're doing all of your work in the cloud, you don't need any type of remote control option because nothing is being hosted in your office environment. If in fact you're an engineering firm and you're doing big CAD files, that might be a situation where you want to do a remote screen sharing program. We actually have worked out a deal with TeamViewer, one of the better screen sharing programs out there. We can get you 25% off of their normal pricing. So if this is something you guys need to get set up, please let us know. Next, what you need to do is pick the right remote access tools. Like I said, is it going to be VPN? Is it going to be screen sharing? Is it going to be something different? Once you've decided on the type of data that you're using, then you get to make the choice of what's the best way to access that data. Next, you want to research printing support. If you're going to be doing screen sharing, look at all of the printers at your employees' houses. Printing is one of those things it's mission critical and sometimes mission critical and everybody forgets about it. Which is one of those rare instances where sometimes printing can be really, really, really important and nobody thinks about it because it's just paper and it's old and of course it works until it doesn't work and then it's a big problem. So if you're sending your employees home to do some testing, make sure that they test printing if that's something that needs to happen. Most of these vendors are going to have a list of supported printers or specific instructions on how to set up printing. If that doesn't work, if you can't get printing to work, if your employee doesn't have a printer, etc., you might want to set up a printing deal with FedEx Office, UPS Store, Kinko's, any of those. Local print shop would be even better if they're still open. If you need to do a bunch of printing, you might be able to just work out a deal. Hey, everybody, I'm going to send you this whole everything I need to print. Can you guys just print it all and stick it in the mail and send it to me, or have it when I need to come pick it up the next day? You also want to be thinking about soft phones. If your business relies on answering phone calls, what happens when somebody calls in and your office, there's nobody at your office? What you want to think about is, can I forward those telephones to employee cell phones? Usually that's the case. Most everybody has a forward button on their desk phone. You also want to think about what happens to main incoming calls. What happens if my employees don't want to have all of their phone calls on their cell phone eating up minutes? What happens if they want to be doing conference calling and multi-way calling and all those features that you get on an enterprise phone system? A lot of times what you can do is get a soft phone. It's a software application that runs on your computer and connects to your telephone system. A lot of times, especially with voice over IP, voice in the internet, telephones in the internet, apologize, you'll be able to connect software phones to your phone system so that I can launch an app on my computer, plug in my headset, and actually dial a phone number. And it will receive phone calls. I can do all of the transferring and conferencing and barge in and all of everything that you'd normally do on a desk phone, you can do with a piece of software. Most companies that provide PBX or telephone systems will have either will have their own custom soft phone that you can use, or you can go out and just get any. It's called SIP phone, SIP. There's one company called 3CX. I think they're giving away a free 3-year trial to their soft phone right now because of coronavirus. Um, I'm going to be scattering throughout the presentation uh, different free trials and things like that, that there's a lot of companies that have decided, hey, we want to help out. We know everybody's working from home. We know you can't just afford to all of a sudden increase your remote work budget for no reason while everything's going on. So a lot of them are offering free trials, free licenses, et cetera. So I'll be sending those to you um, in the show notes afterwards. Once you've got your soft phones in order, you want to think about postal mail. Usually with the post office, you can set up forwarding. So all of your incoming mail comes to the boss's house or the receptionist's house. It's something you can do and then undo. Check with your post office. You can call them. You can go online, I think, and do this. But sometimes, especially these days, you want to make sure you're getting all the checks, you're getting all the orders. If any of these things are coming in through postal mail, make sure you've got some way of handling that. Maybe it's forwarding it, maybe it's sending somebody into the office once a week to get it all. Just don't forget that that's an issue. And then finally, what you need to do is set up extra security. And we're going to go over this in more detail a bit later in the presentation, but I wanted to future pace you a bit. This is one of the things that you need to do in order to make sure that people are working from home and actually doing work and not dealing with ransomware on their computers instead. Okay, so that's what an individual needs to do to work from home. Next, we want to talk about empowering teams to succeed successfully. A lot of times, like I mentioned earlier, teams of people that work well in the office, they hang out at lunch, they chit chat, one person gets up and walks over to the other. There's a lot of conversation that's being overheard. And so this is an area that we really want to put some attention to. Right? We want to think about collaboration and how to do collaboration remotely in a way that still works, that might even be better than in some ways than in person. We want to think about tacit knowledge transfer. There's a lot of information at your company that gets shared at the proverbial water cooler or coffee pot or over lunch or overheard conversations. A lot of these things where it's just, you can think of it sort of as knowledge of your company's happenings floating around in the ethers that happens at the office. And all of that goes away when everybody works remotely, unless you provide some space for it to happen. It's not going to happen over email. It's not going to happen over phone calls as often. It's those things that just happen in passing conversations, and unless you've got some way to recreate those online, there's a lot of collaboration and knowledge transfer, tacit knowledge transfer that actually gets lost. So we want to keep in mind how do we set that up. And then reception triage, not just how to deal with phones, but everything that the receptionist does to empower your teams to take off the workload from them. How do we handle that? What do you need to do? Let's go over that. So first, you want to reconfigure your phone system. We talked about this a little bit. You want to change the reception/auto attendant. That's what AA stands for there. What happens with incoming phone calls from customers, from vendors, from sales? Do they all come in right now normally? Do they all come into a receptionist? Do they go to an auto attendant? And then think about what's going to happen to those incoming calls, where you want them to go once everybody's working from home. Do they go to the receptionist's cell phone? Do you have smartphones in place and they continue to go to all of the existing places? Do you have salespeople that normally have a group phone call, ring group, where you have one incoming sales phone number and it rings everybody's cell phone? if everybody's not on soft phones at their house, can you reconfigure those so that they go to everybody's cell phone instead in your sales team? Extensions, can you forward everybody's extension from their house to their cell phone, to their their backup person, something like that? Does everybody know how to get voicemails remotely? A lot of times you can set up phone systems so they'll email everybody their voicemails, often with a transcription or a recording. If they're not getting that, a lot of people aren't going to dial into the phone system to check their voicemails. That's a possibility that everybody can do with all modern phone systems these days, but unless they're getting emailed that, unless they're getting alerted that there is a voicemail, they're often not going to remember to do it. So remember to reconfigure all of these things in your current phone system. If you need telephone services, we can generally get a new fully functional VoIP system set up in about 48 hours. If you are having some troubles with your phone system, anything like that, and you need help with that, that's our expedited turnaround time these days. Please let us know if you need any help there. Next thing you want to think about in terms of group collaboration is chat, team video conferencing, presentations internally between your team and externally with your clients. There's the external ones most people know about: Zoom, GoToMeeting. There's a lot of, I think Zoom has a free and extra. Zoom and GoToMeeting both have extra long free trials these days, which means you can use their tools to communicate with your clients. Video conferencing, video presentations, they're fantastic. This presentation here is on GoToMeeting. Internally, I would highly recommend Microsoft Teams. They have a free, I believe they just increased it to 6-month trial. If you already have most Microsoft Office licenses, that will include a copy of Teams. Microsoft Teams, in my experience, has been very useful in coordinating internally. You've got internal chat between individual people. You can create groups of teams. You create a team chat room where everybody can talk. You can create a team chat, not just a chat room for specific people, but you can create chat rooms that are designed for specific functions, like water cooler is one that we've got. If you have, this is a way of allowing that tacit knowledge transfer to continue. If you tell people, hey, everybody, here's a location where you can talk to just the sales team about sales stuff, talk to just the operations team about operations stuff, and here's where everybody can just chit chat about what's going on, about coronavirus, about fun memes going around. It's a great way of encouraging communication that goes beyond specific work tasks. While that may seem counterproductive, it actually helps a good deal with loneliness. I find that, I need to slow down at this part, loneliness is actually one of the major challenges that people face when they start working from home, especially when they haven't been working from home for a long time. All of a sudden, all of the people that they normally spend their days with, all of the lunches and getting up and talking to each other and seeing each other and overhearing conversations and that background chatter, if all of a sudden that gets quiet and you're alone at home, or you're alone in an office and trying to get work done where your spouse is in the other room or kids in the other room, it can often seem quite lonely. And to have a place like this where people can just chit chat, just blow off a little bit of steam, just say, hey, I just heard this great joke the other day and I want everybody to know about it. That can be a great team building function. So Microsoft Teams, it integrates perfectly with your own personal Outlook calendar, with all your OneDrive and SharePoint files. I highly recommend it. In addition to Teams and in general chat video presentation tools, you want to think about shared files and how to make sure that those are being handled properly. What you don't want to do is have somebody creating a file and then emailing it to everyone else in the group, and then having them email it to everybody else, and having them make changes and try to email it back. Keeping track of files like that is a nightmare. You don't want to be doing it that way. If you've got on Microsoft 365, they've got OneDrive and SharePoint. That's all got great file sharing built in. It also integrates pretty well with Teams. If you've got Google, they've got Google Drive. Dropbox is another example. A lot of these are free, low cost, free trials. Make sure you've got some way of managing shared files that isn't just email. And finally, you want to check out a whiteboard app. These are great for brainstorming in a group online. One of the problems that a lot of people find is you can't. It's hard to, in an online group when everybody's just got a text chat or they're on the phone together. You can't actually all be looking at the same thing together. There are a number of whiteboard apps that actually let you do exactly that. They let you open up a virtual whiteboard, and you could put on virtual sticky notes, and you can draw and you can type, and everybody sees the same thing. It's a great brainstorming tool. Microsoft has one called Microsoft Whiteboard. It's free. It's available on all the different platforms and mobile and computers at Mac. I don't actually work for Microsoft. I've just found that these tools that they've got, they're over the last several years, they got it right, and I've been really happy with them. So check that out. There's a whole lot of other ones that are free trial, low cost. That's another thing that's going to be helpful in brainstorming, in collaborating, things where you have some people that are very visual, and making plans over the phone doesn't necessarily work for them. This is a great tool for that. And then the last thing I want to talk about is more of a HR, I guess, or personnel thing. Is you want to have daily stand-ups. If this is something that you're doing already, great, continue. If it's not something you're doing, strongly recommend it. Have a meeting with everybody in the company. If you've got a small company, with just your team. If you've got larger companies, it doesn't need to take more than 5 or 10 minutes at the beginning and end of each day. Hey, how you doing? At the beginning of the day, we go around, how's your night? How's everything going? What does the day look like today? Just sort of everybody checking in. Again, this helps fight loneliness. It helps keep people, it helps remind them that they're on a team of people that often care about them, that there's coworkers out there, there's support out there. It's a great way of getting into a day's work and not just feeling like you're back alone with some drudgery. Like you've got a team behind you, you've got it's a great place to keep the idea of your mission alive. And then do it again at the end of the day, 4:45, 4:50, maybe even 5 o'clock. Hey everybody, how'd the day go? Have a great night. What do we need to think about? Here's things to think about overnight before you talk in the morning. We actually do one also around noon, around lunchtime here. And again, I find it very, very useful for reconnecting to everybody and repersonalizing what we're doing. Strongly recommend that. Just keep your stand-ups. They don't even need to be very long. If you're doing a whole company-wide one, again, doesn't need to be very, very long. These can be over telephone, Teams, Zoom, anything like that. Full company meetings are a great place for the owner, the CEO, to give everybody an update. Like, hey, we're in a hard situation here. Here's the update. We had to let these people go, or we're making these sacrifices to make sure that we don't have to let anybody go. Be strong and be clear, and your employees will. It's the thing that we need these days, is for leaders to be strong and clear. Okay, that is all the things you need to do. Maybe not all of them, but it's a good starting point for helping empower teams to work well together remotely. Okay, let's talk about IT security for a moment. Everybody in the world is working from home right now, and that's the cyber criminals and the hackers. They all know this. one of the big ways of hacking people is to look for things that are in the news, and there's nothing in the news today but coronavirus. Look for things that are in the news, send people emails that scare them, send people emails that make them think that it's a newsworthy email, and get them to click on it, and that's the beginning of a hacking attempt. Home PCs are easy targets. If you're a criminal, if you're a real world, physical world criminal, and you need some money, you're probably not going to go to the bank and try to rob a bank because there's so much security there. There's security guards, there's alarm systems, there's vaults. There's no reason. There's a lot of reasons. That's not the easy target. The easy target is the guy standing at the ATM not looking around. It's the person walking down the street with her handful of groceries and she can't get anything. Like, these are the easy targets, and home computers are the easy targets of the IT world. They're not as secured, they're not taken care of as well generally as business machines. If you believe the stats, 30 to 50% of all home computers are already infected with some sort of virus, malware, ransomware. If you're using a VPN to connect to your computer, to connect to your network remotely, then that means a third to a half of all of your employees are connecting into your network with infected computers. This is a recipe for disaster. The next thing you want to keep in mind is the dark web and password reuse. The dark web is it's sort of like a back hidden internet. It's got a lot of very good uses, like people in China that are trying to get around the censorship and read what's going on in the world news. They use the dark web to figure out what's going on in the world. Also, it's got some nefarious uses. It's where most cybercrime happens. It's where most cyber criminals hang out and do a lot of stuff. It's where cyber criminals sell databases of usernames and passwords. You've heard about all of the breaches lately, Target and Experian, and all of the major security breaches that seem to be happening every week, even these days. What happens with those is everybody thinks, oh, whatever, they just got my email address. They didn't actually get my data. Not quite true. The reason that they're getting into those databases is so they can download a list of email addresses, usernames, passwords, and often other information like first name, last name, maybe phone number, maybe physical address, and they wrap up those millions of contacts and they put them on the dark web and they sell them for fairly little amount of money. This is how your credentials get out there on the internet. If you're using the same password to connect to your network as you're using to connect to Equifax or any of these other places that have been breached, then hackers can actually look at your username, look at your password, and try to use your password to connect to your VPN. All of a sudden, they're in, even if you don't have vulnerable VPN. Let me give you an example of this. There's a company called Travelex. They do money exchanging. They're a money changer, foreign money changer. They had a VPN software on their server that hadn't been patched in about 8 months, and hackers broke into it. They broke into the VPN, and once they were in the VPN, they effectively were on the network, and they put ransomware on all the computers and all the servers, and 20 different Travelex websites in different countries became inaccessible for over a week. The company had to shut down systems all over to prevent further spread of the virus, and they were demanding about a 6-figure ransom. You can imagine not only what would happen if the company paid that 6-figure ransom, but also had their website, everything down and inaccessible for a week. This is the danger of password reuse and not having good, strong security. So what do you need to do about this? These days, multi-factor authentication, or MFA, is going to be not quite the magic bullet, but as close as close to one as we have these days. Multi-factor authentication, or two-factor authentication, or 2FA, I might use any of those terms, is when, for instance, you log into your bank and you put in your username and password, and then they say, hey, we just emailed you a 6-digit code. Can you type that code into this form? The reason that they do that is because they want to they're trying to verify your identity. Your identity is verified by something that you know, something that you have, or something that you are. Those are 3 of the possible factors of ways that you can authenticate who you are. So something that you know is your password. Something that you have would be your thumbprint or a security token. I'm sorry. Yes, something that you have is a security token, your cell phone, your email. So that's why they send you a code to that thing. Something that you are would be a thumbprint. These are all different types of authentication. So what multi-factor authentication is, in our sense, is you can set up, for instance, TeamViewer to ask you for a username and password, and then it will send you it'll send you a code to your email, or you'll have a code app on your phone, and you type that in. Microsoft did a survey of all of the recent hacks of their of people who had email addresses on their servers. This is everybody with an MSN account, with a Hotmail account, everybody who used Office 365. They went through all these and tried to figure out how they got hacked and how they got in and all that. And what they realized was that 99% of all of those hacks could have been stopped if the user had had two-factor authentication on their account. It's a huge, again, it's not quite the magic bullet, but it's as close to as one do we have. So if you can set up multi-factor authentication on all systems that you have remote access, you're going a long ways towards making sure that everything is more secure and harder for the hackers to get into. This means screen sharing applications, VPN applications, remote email applications like Office 365, Gmail, Hotmail, something like that. And if you have online database, anything like that, if you can get in with nothing but a username and password, start looking around and around their features for two-factor authentication. If you can't find it, write to the vendor and ask for it, because they really should be offering it. If they don't offer it, there's sometimes you can use a third party, a multi-factor authentication company that will retrofit your logon process with this. So one of our customers needed multi-factor authentication for all remote access in order to remain PCI compliant, because they accept credit cards from their customers. Their VPN software didn't have it built in, so they came to us and they asked us about this. And what we're able to do is work with one of these MFA companies, and now everybody has an app on their phone, and they put in their username and password, and then their app on their phone pops up and says, hey, it looks like somebody's trying to log into your VPN account. Do you approve this or do you reject this? And they just hit approve on their phone, and that's the second factor. It's something that they have. So sometimes you're able to backfit a 2FA program into systems that don't already have them. If this is something that you need, please let us know. Next thing you need to do for making sure that users at home are secure is put antivirus on all home computers. And I mean a good antivirus, a next generation antivirus. Sometimes you'll hear the term EDR, endpoint detection and response. My own personal opinion is Microsoft Windows Defender McAfee and Symantec, AVG, Trend Micro, these aren't great antivirus products. They're good. They're better than nothing for sure, but they're not great. I would go a step further and get something like a Sophos, Kaspersky, Sentinel-1. Those are my top three right now. And make sure that anybody's home computer has good, strong antivirus and it's been run. It's done a full scan before you let anybody connect into the office, because the last thing you want is somebody's home computer to be infecting the rest of the office network. The next thing I would recommend is some sort of security awareness training. Like I said earlier, with the easiest way for hackers to get into anybody's account, it's the easiest way to start launching a hacking attempt on a company is to take a whole list of all the email addresses that they found for your company that they just bought on the dark web. Blast out an email saying, hey, everybody, here's a coronavirus update from the World Health Organization, says the hacker. If they can get anybody to click on there and type in a password by accident, then all of a sudden they're in. The best way to avoid this, A, is to put a good security filter on your email, but B is to train your employees on how to recognize these phishing attempts, how to recognize these hacking attempts, how to recognize what's called social engineering via email, people walking in, phone calls, anything like that. We have a great security awareness training program that actually we can send out fake phishing campaigns. So we can send everybody something that looks like a phishing attempt, and we actually can run reports to see, oh look, these 5 people clicked on the link, and this person actually put in their username and password. We need to make sure that these 5 people receive extra security training, and we've got a whole set of videos and tests that actually let them know, like, this is real, this is what's happening. Finally, I'm sorry, not finally, but next is backups. You want to make sure that all of your data, because nobody's going to be in the office, fewer people might be checking on backups. If you're one of those companies that has tape backups still, well, consider not doing that. Consider getting a more modern cloud-based backup system. If you're using USB drives for your backups, again, sometimes that works. Often that's not a great solution, especially if you're going to be away from the office for a long time and you can't swap out those drives once they get full. You need to make sure that your office and all your data is still being backed up. Most people, no matter what you tell them, no matter how often you say, put all of your data in this location, in OneDrive, in Google Drive, on the P drive at the office, they're still going to save everything to the desktop no matter what. And so I would also recommend helping employees back up their home computers, because it's just going to happen that somebody's going to be saving things on their home computer when they shouldn't be, and they're not gonna know that their computer is about to crash or they're about to get ransomware, and you're going to want those computers backed up. Last thing is you want to be changing your important passwords. We talked earlier about the dark web and password reuse, and anytime that anytime you're reusing a password that you use for your email, for your network access, if those are used anywhere else, they're likely out there by the hackers. The hackers have them already, so you want to be changing those regularly, especially the ones that get into your network. One of the offers that we're going to have here for everybody that's on this webinar right now and everybody who's listening to it remotely, we're offering a free dark web scan. We can actually check your personal email address and all of the email addresses at everybody at your company. We can make sure that we can let you know, yes, here's all of the accounts that have an email address at your company that have been hacked. not have been hacked, but whose dark web credentials are out there. So you'll be able to see username, password, email address, sometimes phone number, address. Anybody who's on this webinar who's interested in that, please let me know and we'll get you set up with that right away. Finally, the point that at least I've been waiting for, hopefully everybody else has been waiting for, is how to take this challenging environment and actually thrive in it. Right? And there's a concept here that I want to talk about called antifragility. If you think about a wine glass here, right? This wine glass is fragile. If you take this wine glass and you drop it on the floor, it's going to break. If you take some fragile thing and you expose it to some trauma or hardship, it will break. That's what fragility. That's what defines fragility. Most people think the opposite of fragility is robustness or resiliency. If you think of a sword, if you drop a sword on the ground, it's not going to break. You can smash that thing into the ground or into other swords as much as you want. Eventually there's a breaking point, but it is way more resilient than the glass. But what we really want isn't something that's just not going to break with challenge. We want something like DNA here, where if you throw a challenge at DNA, it will grow stronger because of that challenge. Anti-fragility is the idea of when something comes against, it takes a knock, it not only can come back from that, it can grow stronger. Nassim Taleb here is the gentleman that wrote the book Anti-Fragility and came up with this concept. And he writes, the fragile wants tranquility. The anti-fragile grows from disorder, and the robust doesn't care too much. So that's what we want, is to be able to grow our businesses, ourselves, our families, our teams. We want to be able to grow from this disorder that we're experiencing with coronavirus these days, not just survive it. This is the big, the inspiration that I want to leave everybody with, is how do we take this challenging situation and become stronger because of it. First thing I want you to do is just call all your customers. Don't email them, don't text them, make a phone call. How you doing? Is there anything I can do? Is there anything like my business can do for you in a business sense? Is there anything personally? Probably not. They're going to say, no, we've got it. And let them know that you're still there. Let them know you're still out there. Most importantly, business is business, and also business is conducted by people. And it's so nice just to know that people are still out there thinking about you. You want to keep meeting with all your referral partners, right? Don't stop those meetings. Keep thinking about who might know companies that are thriving in this business. They are out there in this environment. You hear in the news about all the companies that are tanking and going down, and you hear less about the team viewers and the go-to meetings of the world that are they're doing so well because everybody's out there using them. There are going to be certain customers of yours and customers that aren't yours yet that you could be meeting with and talking to. So keep meeting with your referral partners and talking to them. Similarly, keep marketing. You're probably going to want to change things around. You don't want to sound tone deaf, but what you do want to, you also don't want to disappear. You want to make sure that that your prospects, potential customers, they know you're still out there. The company that they're working with might be one of the unfortunate ones that aren't taking this so well, that weren't so prepared, that didn't have a bunch of money in the bank to withstand troubles like this, hard times like this. And so they're going to want to know eventually who am I going to need to move to. Don't be sending out the traditional, hey, it's Thursday, and so on Thursdays I want to tell everybody about this product. The only thing anybody's thinking about right now is coronavirus, and so keep that in mind. If you can avoid saying, hey, COVID-19 problems, click here. Again, you don't want to be tone deaf. You don't want to be over the top about it, but just sort of keep in everybody's mind that you're still around, you're still trying to help. This is gonna help us thrive, if not now, definitely in the end. This is a great time to clean up, to catch up, and to plan ahead. Right? You think a lot about all of the mess that's on your desk, all of the mess that's in the office, that's in checklists that have just never been gotten to. This is the time to attack those things that have always been important, but not urgent. Most often, we tend to go towards the things that are urgent, that are important, and also have some sort of urgency on them. This needs to get done right now. This needs to get done right now. This needs to get done, but not right now, and so it gets put by the wayside. Most of us are going to be coming into slower times. This is a great time to start looking back into the things that have always been important and always got put on the back burner. It's a good time to create processes, to think about, if you don't have these already, how am I onboarding customers? How I've always wanted to make our sales process more streamlined rather than just letting everybody go ad hoc with it. But I've never really had the chance to do it. This is the opportunity to create processes in your business that are going to sustain you through. At some point, when all this is over, everything's going to come back to life, and all the customers are going to come back, and all the sales are going to come back, and things are going to take off again. And you want to make sure that you have the processes in place to handle all of that extra growth. You might have had to lay off people, and so you might need to hire people to manage things. And if your processes aren't clean and in line and in place, you're going to have a problem with the growth going forward. So this is a great time to catch up on creating those processes and making sure that everything's got a place for your employees to know how to do it right. Again, the important but not urgent thing we discussed already. This is a great time to roll out online services and online trainings. A lot of us that don't offer online services already are coming up with ways to do that. You'll see fitness clubs and personal trainers who have nothing but a physical presence to offer, saying, hey, clients, you're at home and you don't have all the weights, but I know a whole lot of body weight exercises you can do. Let me get you set up, put a camera on you so I can watch your performance and make some tweaks to your adjustments. You might offer trainings. You might offer, hey, this is how your life should look like if you had this particular product in place. And again, you don't want to be tone deaf to the marketing, but this is a great time to add an online presence or fill out an online presence that you might never have had in the past. This will be helpful going forward and also might actually help keep you afloat right now during these times. The last thing I want to say here is give and give and give with no expectation of return. This is an environment and a challenge that we are all facing as people, as individuals, as humans, and we need each other right now, especially in this time of social distancing, where the government and all of the officials are telling us you need to stay away from everybody because it's going to hurt you if you're in big groups. That's correct. It's great advice. We need to physically separate ourselves, and we still need each other. And the more that we can give to one another without needing anything in exchange, the more we're going to be able to get through this. The more our businesses are going to be able to be remembered, be on top of mind. The more we can actually offer somebody something of value. Most of us have businesses not just to make money, but because there's this thing that we want to bring into the world. And to say, oh, I'm going to stay on top of mind during this calamity, it sounds terrible. And you don't have to think about it that way. You can think about it as this business is a thing I created to make the world better, to bring this passion that I have to people. And here's an opportunity where I can use this as a vehicle to help people in a different way. Thank you so much for joining. If there are any questions, please send me an email tim@striveit.com is my email address. I'll be sending out a note for in the show notes, in the webinar notes, with along with the recording information, a link to all those freebies and trials I had. Please be well, please treat each other well, and thank you so much for attending.